Now let's turn to the big stories from the local papers and websites now. This week we look at a French language parking scam, bell foundries and the early literary output of Gareth Southgate. Here to talk us through them is Matt Withers from Archant Media. Matt, we start however in Barking.
Yeah, this is the splash on today's Barking and Dagenham Post. It's about Billy Bragg, and he's questioning why a commemorative sculpture of a soldier who died in Afghanistan is yet to be replaced. It was one of a trio of sculptures which were in Beam Valley Country Park. There was a vote amongst the public about who they wanted from the local area to be commemorated in these statues. One was Billy Bragg, one was a generic Ford striking sewing machinist, and one was Ian Fisher, who lost his life in Helmand province. But his was stolen last year, and Billy Bragg is questioning why it is that it's yet to be replaced.
It feels almost like the start of a Billy Bragg song, though, doesn't it? Do you think it could inspire some new musical output?
It does sound like the kind of thing which would very much lend itself to his oeuvre. Yes. I mean, there's pictures of it here. It's in a really, really overgrown area. In fact, people back in 2016 questioned why it's been allowed to get so overgrown, and they said they were in the process of ensuring the area is tidy and accessible to all. So you kind of question if they can't get that right, are they going to get round to replacing this statue?
Big question indeed. Let's go now to Whitechapel, not far, and the East London Advertiser.
Yeah, the Patriot this week, they're talking about the historic Whitechapel Bell Foundry, which people might know. It's a Grade 2 listed building in Whitechapel Road. It's been there since 1740. I think it was probably Britain's biggest, certainly most historic bell maker. But the premises were sold in 2016 because of rising costs, and basically people don't buy bells quite so much anymore. Now the people who own it want to turn it into a hotel, and they say that it will, it will nod to the heritage of the place. I'm going to stick my neck out. It means they'll probably call the hotel the Bell. But in fact, the United Kingdom Historic Building Preservation Trust, they want to buy it and turn it back into what it was. They've got a report called Saved by the Bell, where they say that they'll acquire the building, re-equip it, restart bell making, and that will have to reinstate employees, you presume have moved on to something else now, and develop a training scheme for future bell makers.
Well,
how many young people these days want to go into bell making? I do not know.
No, yeah, that's something we'll hope to find out in later editions of the East London Advertiser, but it's a story that sounds familiar to many places across London. Now an unusual one, and something to watch out for should you be parking your car in Hampstead.
It is unusual. I can't make head nor tail of it, to be honest. It's in the Ham and High. They refer to a bizarre French language fraud, and it's true. It seems to be a con involving parking meters. And a man, well, he's either French or he's pretending to be a French tourist. He asked unsuspecting passers-by in French if they can use their card to help him to pay for his parking, promising that he'll give them the amount in cash afterwards. One victim, Richard Townley, said, "A younger man spoke to me in French, and even now that makes no sense." Yeah, well, quite, yeah. And he said, he wanted to use his card, but he thinks that he wanted to enter his PIN. And in fact, he went into the florist afterwards and spoke to them, and he'd apparently been in there and had used the card. So this guy did have a card, so he thinks he was trying to get hold of his PIN number and written
to spend on flowers.
Yeah. Yes, which is incredibly French, isn't it? Either flowers or onions, I would have thought.
Extremely romantic, just wanting to buy something. There was always a famous scam in the south of France where an English person with a very posh English accent would try and scam tourists out. So it seems like it's almost the reverse.
Well, scams are coming home.
Scams are coming home. Very good. Now, speaking of coming home, that takes us nicely to the Croydon Advertiser and the early output of Gareth Southgate. Tell us this story.
Yeah, I don't throw this together. Yeah, this is great. I mean, they say all news is local, and certainly the Croydon Advertiser found an interesting line on how Gareth Southgate used to give up his days off to write for the Croydon Advertiser. And it's true, they've spoken to their former sports editor, Dave McClelland. Back in the early 90s, when Gareth Southgate was playing for Crystal Palace, he wrote a column for the Advertiser. And I don't want to peel back the curtain on journalism too much, but if you read a column in a newspaper by a sports person, they have not written that column. But Gareth Southgate used to literally go into the office once a week, would be sat there at a computer typing away his column. He said apparently Gareth Southgate said if he didn't make it as a footballer, he wanted to be a journalist. So this sports editor said, I said he should come in and have a few lessons with the Advertiser. So he used to come in and write a column once a week.
That is extraordinary, because like you said, they're always done over the phone. At most, otherwise they're sort of ghostwritten and then...
They're ghostwritten by their agent, or some poor hack has to phone them up and say, what are you thinking about this week, and try and get it into some kind of English. No, he used to come in. Apparently, when Alan Smith took over as manager there, he wasn't very keen on players talking to the local media, which sadly is all too common, and stripped him of his column. But yeah, he's very keen to it. And Mr. McClelland here, who was the sports editor, he very gallantly says he doesn't take any credit for his success this year. Well, yeah, quite. That was about 25 years ago.
Very short-sighted by Alan Smith, I must say. You know, the local paper is so vital for those sports teams. This really has been a World Cup. I mean, the PR for Gareth Southgate is extraordinary. He comes back with this enormous reputation.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. When you consider that it was just 4 years ago at the World Cup when journalists asked Joe Hart about a darts tournament they'd had, a PR person stepped in and said, Joe won't be talking about that. And now, you know, wonderful access to the players.
Fantastic. And a lovely story there from the Croydon Advertiser. Matt Withers, thank you, as always, for bringing us those great stories from the local papers and news sites.